And good evening, everyone. I am John O'Loughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives. And I'm so happy Monday nights now because I know I get to talk to Garland Nixon at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And we've had so much fun over the past few weeks. I think we must be up around 10 weeks now, Garland, and going strong. I do appreciate your making time for us and for our chat room. Everybody, hello. Aloha. Dave Fitz out there in Glacier, Washington. And hello, everyone else in the chat. And hello, Garland. How are you tonight, sir?
Just wonderful, busy, man. I got big things going on. I'm talking more with, I do my Pacifica radio show in WPFW in Washington, D.C., and I am talking with the people in both Houston and Los Angeles. So hopefully, if things work out, I'll be able to do shows in Houston and expand to Houston and Los Angeles too. I got my fingers crossed. I'm working on it. No guarantee, but there's an open door. I'm hoping that happens because people, I think, need to hear the kind of stuff that we talk about. You know what I mean? And what I mean is things that are not locked into the, oh, well, I'm a Democrat, so I got to talk this way. Oh, I'm a Republican, so I got to talk this way. You know what I mean? I got to believe this because I'm a member of this team or that team. We're just trying to get to the bottom of things. It's not about a team or anything like that. We're just trying to figure out what the hell's going on here and why. And so I think people need more of this kind of discussion that we have.
Well, that's great news, Garland. I do hope that all works out. Those other stations, I suppose, are also Pacifica Network stations?
Yes, they are. Pacifica Network is in New York, Washington, D.C., Berkeley, California, Houston, and L.A. But they have a lot of stations that carry their stuff, smaller stations all over the place, too, like around 300, I think, total.
Well, it's quite an organization, and they've done incredible work over the years. I definitely am glad to hear you talking. You have a show. When does your show air, Garland?
My show every Friday from 6 to 7 p.m. WPFW 89.3 FM in Washington, D.C. I tell you, you know what I like? I like because there are, it's a lefty leaning station, and there are some people there who maybe fall, in the they're the basic Democrat kind of feeling or whatever. And I've had, from management where they've said, oh, people are unhappy with you saying this or you saying that. And management has said, look, that's what this station's about. Let the guy say what he wants. Let people hear it, and, I feel really good because one of the things that I have a reputation for at WP, on Pacific is not being the Democrats or the Republicans, for being the unbiased person, for trying to just figure out what the hell is going on, like I always say. So, I don't know. I hope I'm not blowing my own horn because I tell you what, you do the same thing. There are a lot of people out here that are really, truly and honestly in their heart trying to figure out what's going on. And I think that's what the people in our chat room, the people that watch this show, the people that are watching YouTube or different places trying to find independent media, they just want somebody that's going to try to tell them the truth. And if they make a mistake, say, oh, I was in error here. This is what I really found. You never get that on the mainstream media.
Oh, no, they have that narrative, and they would never admit that they were wrong about something. I maybe 15, 20 years later might say, oh, well, yeah, well, that was, everybody knew that wasn't real, Well, hidden agendas, I thought we were talking about before the show. Hidden agendas. President Biden, what did he run on? What were his big issues? Did he have any other than my hair's not orange and
hiding in the basement?
and has he given us the same issues as a president, or is he pursuing some different agenda?
There are a couple of things here, and that is this Biden business about America's back and we're back and blah, blah, blah. I think what that really means to me, and as you know, I wasn't a Trump fan, I ain't a Biden fan, but here's what that means to me. Donald Trump and I'll put it like this, didn't understand the hidden agenda of the American empire, of the neoconservatives and the neoliberals and the globalists. Donald Trump, to some extent, you can make an argument in some ways. He was a very rich man and he was one of those people, but he didn't understand this machine. So he thought, well, it's a country and we do things like countries do, and therefore I'll make a decision as if it was a country. He didn't make a decision. And I'm the president. He thought he was the president. He didn't realize that this is something totally different. This is an empire, and that there is a program, you know, kind of like an operating system that runs in the background in your computer and you don't see it. Well, there's an operating system in the background. And when we talk about hidden agendas, that's that operating system, that deep state system. You know, that machine in the background that says, we're going to tell the people that we got to give this country democracy, but really we're going to overthrow them and steal their oil. We're going to say we got to help this country out because the women aren't being treated right, when really we want to overthrow their government and steal their oil. You might notice a pattern here. We always want to overthrow. So that machine in the background, that when the president says, hey, bring the troops home from Syria and Afghanistan. Remember when Trump said that? And they were like, 3 days later, Bolton's like, nah, they ain't coming home. And so, but here's what happened. Biden comes in and Biden said, basically, he knows what that machine is. He's been part of it. And he's willing to play his part. Biden knows he ain't really the president, but so much. He's willing to play his part in this band. You know what I mean? And he's like, well, you know, people think I'm the director, but I ain't the director, but I'm willing to play my part in it. I'm willing to go along with this empire, to do the things that we do around the world, to lie to the American people about what we're doing, to lie to the American people about why, to lie to the American people about why when the American people can't get their roads and their infrastructure fixed and they can't get their things done. And it's because we're spending billions on overthrowing countries and building new nuclear subs and things, that we got to lie to the people and tell them certain lies. Biden's all a part of that. So Biden is perfectly happy to be part of this vicious neoconservative, neoliberal, globalist, whatever you want to describe. He's happy to be part of that machine. And he's happy to tell those kinds of lies, to protect the machine, to be a part of it, to accept. Trump wanted to be in charge. Biden's willing to accept that he ain't in charge as long as he gets to do the things that he wants to do. And of course, him and his son and his family and his friends are going to be out there enriching themselves, because that's the big part of the game.
Yeah, and if they don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. So they might as well be the ones that get all the money from the, the hidden agenda. Why should they step aside?
Yeah.
And
can I make a quick comment?
Oh, were you going to go ahead and play that, Andy?
Yep. Right now we.
Oh, where's my audio?
I can comment on it. Do we have audio? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we're here now. All right, we hear you.
Sure, we have audio. Okay, can you hear me fine?
Yeah, I think we're losing bandwidth though when Andy tries to play a video. Maybe we shouldn't try.
Yeah. Well, let me admit, it was about Ukraine. Let me mention something about that and about hidden agendas, right? About hidden agendas and how the American people are lied to. Here's a perfect example, and something that you and I talked about. The country of Ukraine is next door to Russia, and they kind of put some troops on the border as if to threaten Russia, like 20 or 30,000 troops, and Russia put 100,000 troops and just surrounded them and made it obvious that, okay, if we wanted to, we could take you out, so you better stand down. That was just basically what I don't need to spin it any more than that. Ukrainians put their army on the border, and they were outmatched 100 times over, and that was that. Now, here's why it's important right now, and why I'm saying hidden agendas and lies and frauds that we get. If we discussed that, the U.S. had given the Ukrainian military $1.8 billion in military hardware, given them out of our tax money, didn't sell it to them, gave them $1.8 billion in military hardware to, quote, defend themselves from the Russians. When they moved up to the surrounded them, they backed down in a hurry because they would have got crushed. Here's the interesting thing about it. So now Biden and his team are now saying, we've got to give even more war material to the Ukrainians so they can defend themselves from the Russians. Well, wait a minute. it has, as if those of us who knew what was going on didn't know, but now it's been clear to people who didn't know. The Ukrainian army is no match for the Russian army. There is not enough military aid you could give the Ukrainian army that they could stand up against the Russian army. It's like a child trying to fight Mike Tyson. I'm sorry, ain't happening. But we're still giving them millions. There are 125 million. We're still giving them hundreds of millions of dollars of aid under the guise, right? Under the lie that we're giving them that to protect them from Russia. But we know there's not enough material, war material made that we could give them that they wouldn't get routed by Russia in hours. So what are we really doing? It's money laundering. What we're really doing is we're going to Raytheon, we're going to Lockheed Martin, and we're saying, here's $100 million. This gear, we'll drop it off in Ukraine. We know it's not going to do Ukraine any good, but Raytheon and Lockheed Martin still gets $100 million. So that's why I say hidden agenda and lies. Our government is telling us we're going to give hundreds of millions of dollars worth of war material to a country so the country can do X when we know the country can't do X. When it's just a pure lie so that we can money launder tax dollars into the hands of their billionaire friends at Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, and they can take that money and do whatever the heck they want with it. So it's just more lies. So we can, and that's one of the things I was talking about, a hidden agenda. We claim, oh, we're doing this for this country. It's a lie. We're time and again, all we're doing is we're enriching Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, etc.
Yes, and thank you. And to add on to that, what we're doing is we're bribing Congress because we're giving them these campaign donations from the same corporations that you just mentioned, right? It's like a perpetual machine where you get the contract, you give a nice slice to the congressman that got it for you, whoever they are, or women, and they vote for you for the next tranche, and you give them a nice, healthy campaign thing, and they're able to run more ads than the other side, and they get reelected, and it's a vicious cycle that's been going on a long time in our Congress, but not like, right now we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars going out this way, if not in trillions of dollars in some cases, where we, that's our, as you said, that is our money. We need that money. We can't just be giving away money to Raytheon and whenever they decide they want some. The Ukraine, the other side of it is, of course, who else is getting the money but the mercenary armies over there, the Azov Brigade and the Bandera Battalion, or whatever they call themselves, the armies of people that still are adhering to Nazi values, blood and soil, the kind of creepy ideology that is based on the same thing that the original German Nazis were. These are hyper racist people, and that's the other thing. We give that to them, and that enables them to go out and commit more of their racist atrocities.
Well, and here's the interesting thing about that. We see such hypocrisy in the Biden administration, right? And that's I know I feel like it seems like I'm going after Biden, but he's the president now, so hey, he's the one that's got to take it. But remember all this crap about Charlottesville. Oh, that's terrible. Biden was like, I'm running on Charlottesville. We've got to stop. Oh, it's terrible, Nazis. Well, wait a minute. Joe Biden claims he's running on Charlottesville. There were Nazis there. It's terrible. This is not who America is, right? And remember, they were arguing, Trump's a Nazi. If you voted for Trump, you're a Nazi voter. The Trump supporters are Nazis, all this Nazi stuff. But the truth of the matter is, who's supporting Nazis for real? These are not metaphorical Nazis. These are not rhetorical Nazis. These are not people who are saying things you don't like, so you call them a Nazi. These are people who call themselves Nazis. These are people who fly Nazis flags and wolf head symbols. And so the Biden administration, to me, that just shows the level of hypocrisy. Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, who is Jewish, Tony Blinken, who has argued that that his family lost people in the Holocaust. That is a terrible thing. Okay. Today, Tony Blinken and Joe Biden are giving war material to people who are unabashed, proud to celebrate not anniversaries of the death of Stepan Bandera, and who was basically a Nazi sympathizer. Just last week, they had this big celebration in Kiev, where, and anybody can go look, and they were celebrating this brigade. I forgot it was called. I think it's called the Gazia Brigade. But bottom line is, it was a brigade of people in Ukraine who, during World War II, when the Nazis took over Ukraine. That's it. Just last week, Andy's awesome. But so there were people, and look at they're celebrating a Nazi SS brigade from World War II in their country. And that's who Joe Biden and Antony Blinken telling us about some rules-based order and how they're going to bring goodness and kindness and wokeness, whatever the hell, to the entire world. What they're bringing to the entire world are a bunch of Nazi SS members. I mean, they're just the biggest hypocrites on earth.
Yes, and who knows what else these people are involved in? And I'm thinking of just underground rat lines, all kinds of illegal activity, from drugs to human trafficking to anything else that they're in it for the money. And if they can make money, and they have to stay below the radar screen, so why not? Why not do business with the real bad guys? Why not? As a matter of fact, I think they are the real bad guys. And we have a population here that will, go to Richmond and knock down the statues of Confederate leaders. Baltimore, same thing. Statues just falling right and left. Anybody associated with the old slave trade, is like they're going to take the statue down. But these are the same people that are going to support Joe Biden and Tony Blinken in whatever they want to do, because that's their team. They're on the Biden team. They're on the Blinken team, and that's all they need to know. I'm on this team. I had a guy. A man I knew from theater when I used to do theater up in Baltimore, and a very nice man. It's every people we meet in theater and in the arts and music. If you don't know their politics, you're going to get along just fine. You never know. But most people in the world I was in were very, very liberal, and yeah, it's fine. I was very liberal too myself. I've really always considered myself to be a liberal until I figured out the fraud that there is behind this idea of liberals. But they don't see that. So, but anyway, this young man, I guess he's 40 something. I posted the question, what is it besides the orange hair that makes people absolutely hate Donald Trump? I know there must be something. What is it? Policies? Is it something that he wanted to do, or something that he did, that you fervently object to? What is it? And nobody answered from the anti-Trump side. Didn't answer at all. But this man wrote a nice long essay in which he told me that nobody's going to answer your question. We're all divided now. You can't expect us to have an open mind. We have already separated. We're not going to be coming to the table to talk to you guys or the other side. It's over. And only thing I could say was, well, thank you for your honesty, but it's people like you that are willing to sit down and actually write in the first place that are the ones that have the power that can possibly save this country, to save what we have. And I didn't get an answer to that, but it is kind of shocking to realize that this division might be permanent.
Well, you know what's interesting too, and part of it is the division is being pushed too. It's being pushed by the media. It's being pushed by the machines behind the media. I often talk about Fox because I was at Fox for 10 years and went on all the shows. The thing I remember, and it's of course one of the reasons I left because Fox is, here's what kills me: the Democrats who love MSNBC and CNN. And I'll see this and they'll be like, Fox is terrible. Fox is a bunch of lies. Fox is garbage. Fox is this. Fox is that. And I'm like, and you think MSNBC and CNN are telling you the truth? You know what I mean? I like personally, I'm like, yes, I agree. It is a bunch of lies. And CNN and MSNBC are at least as bad, if not worse. The mainstream media, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the mainstream media agrees on certain things, and it's the worst possible things. But here's the thing I remember about Fox, and I know the same about MSNBC, CNN. Here's what they try to do. All of our mainstream media is deliberately trying to separate us because when like I was coming on I was like on all the time. And so they'd be like, oh, here's what we're going to do, Garland. Today we're talking about this. But I saw the setup. The setup was always trying to have one person on who was talking the mainstream Republican talking point, right? And they wanted somebody else on who was going to talk the mainstream Democratic talking point. So they wanted to always create an environment. And I'm saying this is at Fox. This is what they do at MSNBC. This is what they do at CNN. They want to create that Overton window where you can only talk from the mainstream Republican talking points, a Liz Cheney or whoever the heck, a George W. Bush kind of thing, right? To a mainstream Democrat, a Hillary Clinton or a Joe Biden or something. But anything outside of that, there are a lot of us out here now who would look at Joe Biden or Liz Cheney or Hillary Clinton or Mitch McConnell or Nancy Pelosi with the same jaundiced eye, that would look at them and say, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, go to the Senate, Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell. Do I feel like one of those people has my best interest in hand? Absolutely not. But they want to stop people from looking outside of that false bubble they create for us. And that's why I say the mainstream media is so terrible. And it's not like the conservative mainstream media or the liberal, whatever the hell you want to call it, mainstream media, like one of them's good. But you got these people who look at like, well, no, you got to understand. Fox is full of, I see this all the time because I know a lot of people who are Democrats, right? Fox, oh, they should be gone off the air. They're terrible. They're horrible, blah, blah, blah. And I say, and I'll ask, what about CIANN and MSNBC? I turn on CNN or MSNBC, and all I see is them parading a bunch of retired CIA agents across the stage all day. And you think they're telling you the truth? And you think they're acting in your best interest and giving you news? They don't even have to do any operations anymore where they funnel money to the people on TV or writing articles. They just go right on TV themselves, and you're watching them thinking that they're telling you some kind of a truth, that they're some kind of a truth teller. It is pathetic as far as I'm concerned. And it's pathetic that people have become so sheep-like. I put it like this. If I turn on the news and they're like, here we have retired CIA agent John Brennan here to, no, I'm changing the channel. At the point that they say retired CIA agent whoever, it's time for me to look elsewhere, because the only thing I'm going to get from that guy is what the government wants me to think. The only reason I ever turn on the mainstream media is so I'll know what the government wants me to think, so I'll know I'll need to go in another direction.
We know this. You know it. I know it. The folks in the chat room know it, but America doesn't know it. Not yet, but they're going to know it because, like you, I am also equally determined to communicate this message as a neutral person in the middle. I am not saying I don't have my own feelings. I don't have my own politics, but I think that we perform a service to educate people when we simply try to be neutral and try to get the facts out. What are the real facts? And I think you've done a great job with Ukraine today. I think you've summarized it very well, and I just wish that the American people would pay attention to Garland Nixon and to other independent voices instead of being glued to the television and glued to the radio, where all this drive time stuff. I guess there's not so many people out there doing commuting anymore, but still people spend incredible amounts of time in their cars. And so many people I know will always have the radio on. And often, in my case, it's often either the PBS station, NPR station, or something like that, which is going to give you a very, very liberal left agenda and a narrative that's going to be completely anti-Trump. And if you listen to that stuff all day long, it's going to sink in that Trump has just got to be the most horrible creature that ever held office. And I think a lot of people would really like to see him dead, including a very famous opera singer I happen to know. I just want him dead. That's quote unquote. Why is it so? Well, I think they've found a way to psychologically condition people to hate, and that is the only way I can explain it, because nothing blinds you to the facts more than being emotionally upset, angry, hatred. That passion that can. If you've already made up your mind about something and you just want things to go the way you think they ought to go, then you can work up a real passionate anger and hate for somebody. But it's counterproductive, especially when you're talking about something as complicated as national politics and international politics and foreign affairs and the interplay between our intelligence services and our taxpayers and our military and our foreign allies and foreign enemies, and the list just goes on and on and on. It's a very, very complicated world, but they get us to just judge on personality. Like, oh, he's a bully. I don't like him. He's a bully. Well, okay. Teddy Roosevelt was a bully, right? But, everybody loved Teddy Roosevelt because he went out and, rode up the San Juan Hill and made himself a hero. And so everybody thought, geez, he's a bully for him. Well, that word has changed a little bit. Now it's not positive anymore. It's like he's a bad guy. He pushes people around, and that's it. I mean, they just were able to do an ad hominem on Trump over and over and over again till it just sunk in too deep for anybody to actually consider, what he's really stood for and what their team stood for. Which is why I'm just so I'm frightened, but I'm encouraged. And actually, maybe we needed this. We needed to see, an election of somebody that is a complete tool of this oligarchy behind the scenes, the blob, as you and I have called it in the past. And there is a blob, and we're not in it. As to paraphrase George Carlin, there is a blob. You're not in it.
Well, I'm agree with you. And to some extent, you hit the nail on the head when you say they just repeat things, because what they do is just repeat the same things over and over and over. They learn from weapons of mass destruction. And what they learned is, even if your argument has no substance, if you repeat it over and over again, people will start to believe it. That whole Russiagate thing, right? Early, and on my radio show in Washington, there's left people. Can you imagine? And I was coming on every week saying it's a bunch of garbage. It's lies. It is garbage, because I actually looked into it. I said, it has nothing to do with whether I don't like or don't like Trump. It makes no sense. And I would argue, and people would call in. And what I found was, here's the interesting thing. The less people knew, the more certain they were that they were right. You know what I mean? And so the more they repeated something over and over in a person, and I would say, look, these intelligence agencies understand something. They understand. There's a great book, I love to read a lot of books, and it was called The Confidence Game, Why It Works Every Time. And of course, The Con Game, The Confidence Artist. And I would be on my show saying, look, they know you hate Trump. Therefore, anything negative they tell you about Trump, you'll believe. They know if you loved this guy, Anything positive that they say about that guy, you'll believe. You're being played. They're giving you absurd and ridiculous, making absurd and ridiculous claims, but they're repeating them over and over. And because you hate Trump, if they said, well, you know, Trump's an alien from Mars and he's here to eat us, they'd have believed it at that point. Because it didn't matter. Hey, it was Trump. I even had somebody say to me, and I'm like, you know, these things are ridiculous. And this guy said, yeah, but I think it's a blunt object that we can use to beat Trump over the head with. I said, what do you mean we? It's the CIA that's using that blunt object. You're nothing but a tool for the CIA. The blunt object is your head that the CIA is putting lies in, and you're even admitting you don't really believe them, although a lot of these people, it didn't matter. They believe it didn't. You know how it is. If people hate something enough, anything you can tell them. If people hate Garland, you could walk in tomorrow. You know, Garland's a werewolf. I knew it. He's got to be stopped. They don't really mean Garland's a werewolf. I don't believe in werewolves. What they mean is, I hate Garland. It feels good when you tell me negative things about Garland. So tell me more. That feels good. One thing I did want to move to, since we're about halfway through, and I think it's important, and you and I haven't discussed it, but I do definitely want to. We talked a lot about that stuff, but we haven't hit on the issue of Julian Assange. Right. And I think that is I am a big supporter of Julian Assange. I'm a big supporter of WikiLeaks. I'm a big supporter of revealing the truth on, these, international criminals. And I just wanted to bring up one quick article and show the hypocrisy. So there's an article in Common Dreams, and it says, direct attack on the First Amendment. Trump DOJ secretly obtained Washington Post journalist phone records. When the government spies on journalists and their sources, it jeopardized freedom of the press, said the ACLU. Now, to defend the ACLU has stood up on behalf of Trump. On behalf of Assange. So I will give I'm not going to include the ACLU on this because they've stood up on behalf of Assange and they support him. My point being this. The Washington Post is going to argue that the government shouldn't be looking into their journalists and getting their, trying to do an investigation and find out who they were talking to and getting their phone numbers. I agree. I agree with the Washington Post that it should be they should be First Amendment protected, and that it's dangerous when the government starts looking at journalists and getting their phone numbers and tapping their phones so they can find out. I'm with the Washington Post. However, how is the Washington Post and those bunch of neocons and warmongers there going to support the persecution of Julian Assange? They're going to support the arrest of a man who told the truth, who exposed the lies and the criminality of these people in power, right? They're going to support the persecution of him. But yet when somebody starts looking at their phone number, this man's in jail. All he did was told the truth. He told the truth on Hillary Clinton and the liars in the Democratic Party. He exposed what they were doing. And he's in jail, but yet they're mad because somebody tapped their phones. I agree with them. The government shouldn't be tapping your phones. But how can you stand there and support the persecution of this man and have him in jail? And you know what it is? He released that Vault 7 information on the CIA, and he exposed the lies, hypocrisy, and illegalities of Hillary Clinton, her cronies in 2016, and they want revenge on him. And they don't want, and let me add one other thing, and they want to go after him so that they can send the message out to anybody out there. If you're thinking about exposing us, if you're thinking about exposing information from the CIA, look what we're doing to Julian Assange. You're next. It's all about chilling people's rights and making people afraid to tell the truth. So watch the Washington Post, to me, what hypocrites that they'll stand up for their rights, their First Amendment rights, even though I agree with them, while they support the persecution of Julian Assange.
Very well said. I don't have any. I maybe have a little vestigial respect for the Washington Post, but it's so low on my screen right now. I don't look at it, and it's so sad because this is the paper that we grew up with. Every day we'd be dying. Where did the paper come yet?
Yep.
And it's part of our culture. Really, I think I was talking to Andy Craig about the Hartford Courant, where he grew up in Hartford, and the same thing happened up there. The Hartford Courant got took over by corporate people that just run with the narrative, and the narrative comes from the CIA. And
Right.
people have got to recognize this, that they are professional storytellers, and they put actors in place. But earlier when you were talking about Biden being willing to be that person, I'll be the front man. I'll be the person that goes out and talks on the thing, and I'll say what you want me to say, and I'll make the deals you want me to make. I'll sign the paper, just hand it to me. He's comfortable with that. He's probably been doing it all his life, so it's nothing new. But it reminded me of an interview, or very famous interview with Lady Diana, Lady Di, the former wife of Prince Charles, and she was talking about him, and she said, the question was premised, well, Charles may well be king soon, and she said, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's possible. I said, well, why do you say that? Well, it's quite a burden, to take on that role. And that resonated with what you said about Biden. And there's some people that are able to take on that role and say, okay, I'll be the king of England, I'll be, who is it in A Princess Bride, okay, now you be the pirate, Dread Pirate Dan, and I'll be, well, the whole thing is, yeah, this is all scripted in a broad sense. You guys are going to go out and you're going to fight, and boom, 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 and maybe if it goes to war, you'll lose 100,000 guys and you'll lose 200,000, or you lose 1 million and you'll lose 50 million, and we could have World War II, and but basically it's just you guys are putting on a big show. You're fighting, and what are you fighting over? Well, you're fighting over stuff that's ultimately going to belong to us. What you're doing is you are reducing the amount of opposition that we will encounter when we finally come in and say, okay, now we own everything. And this is why I think, that it's important to keep that great reset in mind, and the Klaus Schwab World Economic Forum, and the idea of this green revolution, which the good folks over at Chiller Institute have just illustrated clearly. It's a horrible thing for us, because it's going to diminish our ability to create the energy that we need to sustain a modern economy. It'll bring us back towards the Middle Ages with water mills and windmills and things that are really just nowhere near the efficiency of modern machinery requires for the amount of power. So anyway, let's get back to Assange, because all this stuff is all tied together, and Assange is a real journalist. And as you said, this is intimidation. This is, them showing, we will do this to you if you stand up, don't stand up. We like to play whack-a-mole, and if you pop up out of your hole, we've got a nice mallet for you, and we're ready. We're going to go whack right down on your head. So don't pop your head up. That is the message I see coming from Belmarsh Prison and the British establishment that is working with the American establishment to maintain this human torture that's going on to this fine young man. I mean, whatever his flaws are, they could not possibly be raised to the level of deserving what's happened to him.
Yeah, and here's the thing about it, and he's not in jail for anything like that. So what he's in jail for is the ultimate crime of empire. The ultimate crime, and as I'm sure you talk about the American Empire and the British Empire. Well, people are like, well, when the pound sterling crashed, the British Empire crashed. Well, not really. It just kind of went hybrid, and it joined together the U.S. Empire. They say they have this special relationship. It's a relationship of an empire, and where Assange went wrong is the one thing that you can't do is tell the truth. You can't tell the truth, because the truth is, let me give you an example. We're talking about going out and overthrowing other countries, right? Okay, a perfect example. Venezuela. So the U.S. says, "Oh, Venezuela, and this is how it always works." And this is the same thing they did with Trump. We want to overthrow this country, right? Here's where they always start. The leader is evil and he's a dictator. You ever notice that?
Oh yeah.
That country's got a lot of oil, and I don't care who it is. He could have got 99.9% of the vote. It don't matter. He's evil. He's a dictator, and we got to bring him whatever it is. Democracy, stand up for whatever these fools talk about. Here's the interesting thing about it. Well, what's the truth? Venezuela has more oil reserves than any country in the world. You'd have to be a fool not to realize that the U.S. wants to overthrow the government of a country with more oil than any other country in the world. And for anybody to think it ain't about oil, I can't imagine how naive you would have to be to think that the U.S. wants to, quote, bring some democracy, something I don't even think we have here, to be honest with you. I'll put it like this. In 2016, I was a Bernie Sanders supporter, and he got robbed by the Democratic Party. So there sure ain't no democracy in the Democratic Party. I don't feel as though we have anything resembling democracy in America, to be quite frank with you. But they're going to argue we're bringing democracy. No. And here's to go one level further. And it's not because they want to steal the oil, right? Imagine right now, the U.S., the two countries they want to overthrow. Now, you may find this shocking, but Venezuela, more oil reserves than any country in the world. Iran, the fourth largest oil reserves in the country. Anybody that thinks that is a coincidence, I don't know what to say to them. So, but think about this. What does the U.S. want? It wants oil prices high, right? So, aren't they getting what they want? If the country, imagine if right now we really stopped all the sanctions on Venezuela and they could pump all their oil, and stopped all the sanctions on Iran and they could pump all their oil. What would happen to the price of oil if all of that oil went onto the market, right? Mm-hmm. It would drop. So we want a high oil prices. Why? Because it costs so much to make this tar sands oil. So we want the high oil prices. So I don't care what they tell you about bringing democracy and niceness and wokeness to these countries. The sanctions right now are about keeping that oil off the market. Venezuela and Iran trying to stop them from selling oil to keep the market price artificially high so that they can make more money. That's what that's about. So all the crap that we get, another perfect example, Yemen. We're told, the Saudis are fighting Yemen for whatever, and their leadership is bad. Look at a map. You have Saudi Arabia sitting up there, right? Saudi Arabia only has two ways to access the sea. One of them through the Straits of Hormuz, which is controlled by Iran, right? The other one is through the Straits of, it's called Bab al-Bin Bab, which is controlled by Yemen, which is an Iran ally, which means that Iran would control both very narrow pathways for Saudi Arabia to get to the sea. So Iran could shut off Saudi Arabia's ships of oil going to the sea anytime they want. So for all the talk about we're doing this or that, the war against Yemen is about Saudi Arabia's access to the sea. So when they tell you, well, we've got to do this for this country, it's a lie. Well, we got to bring wokeness and rights for everybody and democracy to this country. It's a lie. It's about money. It's about access to the sea. The South China Sea, 30% of all goods in the in the world are transported through the South China Sea. If anybody thinks that we ain't in the South China Sea for that, again, they're naive. All my points are made, and I make all these points to say that get back here. But the access to the sea that we talk about, is that putting money in our pocket? Is that taking money in our pocket? No, it's not. These things that our government is doing, these wars that they're pushing, these starvations and sanctions of innocent people in other countries that they're pushing, they don't benefit us. They usually hurt us. They usually keep prices artificial high. Therefore, that small group of oligarchs. You know what kills me? They're always talking about Russian oligarchs and Ukrainian oligarchs, and this country has oligarchs. Bezos ain't an oligarch. Soros ain't an oligarch. Why is it that the people that have even more money than the people in those countries, they're oligarchs? In our country, they're just not Bill Gates. I guess he's just a nice guy that's here to do us all wonderful things. But of course, if he's in another country, he's an evil oligarch. And all of these things that are being done and all of these lies are to put more money in the hands of Bill Gates or Charles Koch or George Soros or Elon Musk. All of this stuff is to put more money in their hands, but it hurts us. We don't get any help out of this. Our kids are the ones who will go over and die in the desert or go to prison if they refuse to fight for these people. So it's all a fraud. And even then, even this empire, we don't get anything out of the empire marauding around the world stealing stuff. We get hurt by the empire. Our kids are threatened with having to go to war and die on behalf of the empire so money can go in the hands of a few small of a small group of oligarchs. And Biden, see, the Biden team is all for that. They're part of that machine, and they're all in on the lies. They're all in on saying things like, we've got a rules-based order. And when people are like, well, wait a minute, I understand what international law is. You're an attorney, we understand what international law is. We understand there's international legal bodies. There's agreements. We understand international law. What the hell is this rules-based order that you speak of? You ever notice something? As much as Tony Blinken and Biden talk about a rules-based order, they'll never tell you what the rules are. Because the rules are, they get to maraud around. The rules are just like Hunter Biden. They can go around the world. They can overthrow a government. They can send their children, their kids, their business partners into that country after we overthrow it and pick the bones of it, steal everything there, and then on to the next country and leave the people there starving, struggling, whatever. For all this crap about bringing democracy or wokeness or whatever the hell to some country, every country that we've overthrown, the people are left in misery, death, slavery, all kinds of horrible things. And then they just tell us again, oh, well, there's another country we haven't gotten to. We got to go over there. And they just happen to have oil, but we'll help them out with that.
Can I quote you on that?
All of it.
You put it all together pretty darn well. I started to giggle for a minute because you mentioned the name of a port that sounded to me like it might have been named after a redneck Jew. It was called
Bob Al Ben Bob.
Yeah, Bob Al Ben Bob. Bobby Al Ben Bob, right?
Have you, let me ask you this. I just want to get this in. I'm hearing, that gigantic explosion in Beirut, at the port of Beirut, where
Sure.
like hundreds of people were killed and it was really terrible. And they were saying that it was just, it just happened to be a ship full of fertilizer, just happened to be there. And a fire just happened to start right next to it. And it blew half of the city to smithereens. It was just a coincidence, as we were told, right?
Yeah.
There are more and more people who are looking at that believe the CIA and the Mossad were involved. That port was going to be a big part of the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. And they're thinking the CIA and the Mossad, and there's a lot of discussion about that, blew that up as like kind of a war on the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. But think about this. If they did that, that means they blew the heck out of that city and killed hundreds of people and wounded thousands of people just for their own nefarious political means. A lot of people don't know this, and you can look it up. The U.S., the CIA during the 1960s was considering doing a couple things. They were considering doing bombings around Miami and blaming them on Cuba or blaming them on the Russians. Look it up. They were considering taking airplanes and painting them with Russian stuff and then like bombing some U.S. military, bombing our own people. Mm-hmm. Killing our own people, just so they could blame it on the Russians. Think about a government. If the CIA would kill their own people then, they'd sure as hell do it to anybody on the other country, and they'd most likely do it to us now.
Yeah, it was called Operation Northwoods.
Yes.
It was written by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Leimnitzer, although I don't attribute the policy to him. I think he was just the guy that wrote up the memo. It is a CIA hallmark that they will do the dirty stuff. That they will play what Alan Dulles called fun and games. Well, fun and games for him maybe, but it's torture for Julian Assange. It's torture for any of their victims. and it's going to be torture for anybody that doesn't toe the line. If imagine if Joe Biden suddenly decided, well, you know what? I remember that little conscience that I had when I was a little kid, and it's going to come back now and grow like the Grinch's conscience in the end of the story. And I'm going to have a heart that grew 3 sizes, and I'm going to feel like a really good person, and I'm going to go out and execute policies, that are going to help people all around the world, and we're going to export power, and we're going to make everybody healthy, and we're going to stop bombing everybody. And, what do you think kind of fate would happen to Joe Biden if he did that? Well, anybody that is in the blob, it's like being in the Borg, for goodness sakes. They're stuck. Hillary Clinton, she can't leave. She'll never leave the blob. But they're in. And this stuff is very, very serious. It's exactly what you say, that they don't care about national boundaries. They don't care about laws. The idea is this is an empire building machine that they have signed on for. They're empire building soldiers, and they might think of themselves as, I'm a knight, but boy, I'm going to be a duke one day. I'm carrying water right now, but boy, if I work my way up in this thing, I might be able to get to be a prince, or better, a vice president of a multinational corporation. And so many of them have achieved that. But what have they done to do it? They've thrown their whole life into deception, into defrauding other people, into believing a false narrative of racial superiority on their part, which is complete pseudoscience. I have to go back to the pseudoscience of eugenics that was so popular and still is among these elites. They just changed the name, and they found a way to get their goals of drastically lowering the population subtly woven into international policy through groups like the World Health Organization, the UN, and all of the foundations from Ford and Rockefeller and Carnegie. But, we also absolutely can't just let the show run out without paying tribute to what I think would be the greatest oligarch outfit of them all. And that is the City of London and the Royals.
Chatham House. I mean,
and the Royals. You can't leave the Royals out. They're the ones that have title to everything. They own so much real estate all over the world. The money that they have, and then they, of course, are also, as we were talking about with Prince Charles earlier, they are in roles. They have to play these roles, and they're stuck too. But the amount of control that they have based on the wealth that's been gathered there over centuries is we can't leave that off the radar screen when we're looking at the oligarchs. As you said, the British Empire didn't die; it just kind of went into a more subtle state and integrated itself with Silicon Valley, and especially with Wall Street. That's my studies have shown me.
Let me give you an example. So Israel in the 1967 war goes into Syria and takes the Golan Heights. Well, according to international law, if you take any ground in the war, you have to give it back afterwards. Well, they kept the Golan Heights. Well, there happens to be a lot of oil under the Golan Heights. So what does Israel do? They are illegally occupying the Golan Heights. Israel has granted mining and oil and all of these rights to a company called Genie Energy. Right? Well, let's look at the advisory board for Genie Energy. Number 1, former president of Harvard, Larry Summers. Mm-hmm. Number 2, former ambassador to the UN and energy secretary under Clinton, Bill Richardson. Let's go again. Former U.S. Senator Mary Landrieu, and she serves as the chair of the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources. So you see why people want to be like, why does Bill Richardson want to be the chair, the energy secretary under Clinton? Why would Mary Landrieu want to be the chair of the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources? Well, now look what they've got. Now, who else is on the advisory board for Genie Energy? James Woolsey, former director of the CIA. How about this? He's the co-founder of the United States Energy Security Council and chairman of a think tank called the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Well, who else happens to be on their advisory board? 46th Vice President of the United States, Dick Cheney, founder and executive chairman of News Corp, Rupert Murdoch. Oh, wait a minute. Chairman of the J. Rothschild Group of Companies, Lord Jacob Rothschild. And last but not least, Wall Street investor and principal manager of Steinhardt Management, Michael Steinhardt. Those are the people in charge of Genie Energy. Those are the people who Israel has given exclusive rights to the oil under the Golan Heights. That ain't their oil, that's Syria's oil. But now when people say, why are we occupying Syria? Think about this. The United States right now is illegally occupying Syria, and in particular, the Syrian oil fields. Look at those names, and you will understand why Israel is occupying Golan Heights. Why the U.S. is occupying the Syrian oil fields. The same name, the Rothschilds, the Cheneys, Larry Summers, over and over, the same names. These people are pirates. They're going around the world stealing people's stuff. That's Syria. The Syrians have a right to their natural resources. Right now, we've got these sanctions called the Caesar sanctions, these horrific sanctions where we're starving the people of Syria. Why? So that Rothschild and Cheney and Rupert Murdoch and all these people, the same old names, and Larry Summers can go in there and can steal these people's oil. That's what it's all about. Listen to those. I mean, when you look at those names, for God's sake, Larry Summers, Bill Richardson, Mary Landrieu, James Woolsey, Dick Cheney, Lord Jacob Rothschild, and Rupert Murdoch. What else do I need to say to people for them to realize that they're being that they're being lied to about why we're going around the world overthrowing countries? It's not about bringing democracy. It's not about looking out for the women or minorities or whatever woke lie they're telling you. It's because Rothschild and Rupert Murdoch et al. Want to go, or Bill Gates or Charles Koch or whoever the heck the billionaire is that's funding these various politicians want something that those countries have, and they will use our U.S. military as mercenaries so they can go in and steal it. And we're going to pay for it. And not only are we not going to get anything out of the deal, we're going to pay more, and we're going to starve, and our roads and our infrastructure is going to fall apart so that they can go around the world like, Blackbeard, robbing everybody.
Well, guys, this has been a great night for me. Garland, a terrific, as usual. I learned a lot. I had not figured out the scheme behind keeping the oil prices high by applying the sanctions to all the countries that could provide so much of it and so cheaply, and that makes a ton of sense to me. A number of other examples tonight where I learned stuff I just did not know or hadn't figured it out yet. That's exciting to me, and it's really a pleasure, Garland, for you to share your experience, as well as you really are a deep diving researcher as well. So I look forward to next week, and everyone take care. Spread the word about what's going on in this country, and the availability of people like Garland Nixon to help straighten out people that are confused. We all need it. Thank you, Garland. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Andy. Good night, everyone.